Authors Over 50, Writing in Life's Sweetest Third. Authors Over 50's weekly podcast celebrates writers and their journeys to publication. Writing after 50 is a whole story on its own, so let's skip to life's sweetest third and talk with authors about their journey from pen to publish. Welcome. I'm Julia Daly, your host, and I invite you to listen to interviews with writers who've achieved their goal of publishing a book just later in life. We've seen award lists for under 30 or under 40, but I've yet to see lists for those who've achieved a significant milestone of their own, launching a new career and publishing their first book after the age of 50. We will hear about these authors' inspirations, struggles, strategies, and the smell of that first book. These writers' journeys inspire me because I'm one of them. My guest today spent a long career as a freelance nonfiction writer and editor, specializing in health and nutrition, and published several books and many articles on the topic over the years. Her debut novel, When Robins Appear, launched in 2020. Her second novel, Breathing in Reverse, was published on August 1st, 2023. She has a monthly column in Writer Unboxed titled Getting Down to Business, with the latest on the writing and publishing business, and is a frequent contributor to Women Writers, Women Books. She grew up in Louisiana, spent 13 years in New York, and settled in Austin, Texas, where it's summer 9 months of the year. She's an avid walker, drinks way too much coffee, and has a small devil dog who keeps her on her toes. Welcome to Authors Over 50, Densie, not Denise, Webb.
Thanks so much, Julie. I'm glad to be here.
Densie, our opening questions on Authors Over 50, as always, what took you so long to write your first book?
I think, of course, I was extremely busy just with my career as a writer-editor. And I was an older mother. I didn't have children till much later in life. So I was busy with my career. Then I was busy with children and my career. And it got to where it had to be. They were older and I had more time on my hands. And a good friend of mine who I have known since we were 14 years old, she was like, "You can do it. Just do it." And so I started doing it. And it's been about 8 years ago, I guess.
Well, once you wrote that first manuscript and had that ready to go, how did you proceed? Did you search for an agent, decide to choose a hybrid, a small press, or did you self-publish?
I did try to get an agent, but everyone knows how incredibly difficult that is. I got a couple of nibbles, but nothing that proceeded past the initial stage. And so then I started submitting to small publishers. And that's when Red Adept contacted me. And it was ironic. I was at a writers' conference in Salem, Massachusetts, when I got an email saying, I've been trying to call you. And of course, I had my phone turned off because I was listening to talks and so forth. So yeah, it was at a writers' conference that I got the call from Red Adept, and I was thrilled. I was really, really happy. That was for When Robins Appear.
So exciting to hear that someone's going to publish your first book. There's just nothing like it.
Yeah.
Did writing your first book change your process of writing, or how'd you work on the second book after writing the first?
I have I guess it's a process, if you want to call it that. I'm very, very slow. And I do what a lot of consulting editors tell you not to do, and that is that I edit as I go. I edit obsessively as I go, and that really slows the process. But I bought a cork board once with the sticky things, and I've tried Scrivener. I've done the inside outline, all these things that they tell you will make the process easier. And my brain shuts down. I just can't make it work that way. So I've finally accepted, I'm working on my third manuscript, and I've accepted this is how I work, and it works for me. It may take me longer, but I'm more comfortable with that type of process. So that's how I write.
I have to imagine that being an editor yourself would certainly make you want to edit every single line as you go, because even when I'm reading other people's work, I'm trying to edit their work. So
exactly.
It kind of takes the pleasure out of reading now, because I would say, oh, I love how she did that, or oh, I wonder how she could pull that off. Or
exactly. It's very, very difficult to read as a reader. I try to, but yeah, you just pick up every little glitch, because every published book, even major authors, they have typos. There's a comma there that shouldn't be there. There's one missing. You pick up on all that stuff, but it's fine. It's fine. I learned from reading. So.
Well, I was an English major, and so when I started writing my first manuscript, I did the same as you. I was editing as I went along, and then I joined NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, where you just have to get the words on paper, because you have to write 50,000 words in the month. That's like 1,800 words a day or something, and it's crazy. So I learned to not edit, just get the words on paper, and then you'd have something to edit when you finished.
I would never be able to do NaNoWriMo. I just, no.
It's a crazy process, but it did help me to write more quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was your inspiration for your first book?
My first book, When Robins Appear, my daughter was in high school at the time, and she had a classmate that had a very serious skateboarding accident. And I decided I wanted to write something about that. And as always happens, it sort of evolved, and there's skateboarding in it. One of the characters does skateboarding, and there's competitions and stuff. But yeah, it drifted from that, and that definitely was not the focus. But that was the inspiration for it. And some of my daughter's experiences in high school were also inspiration. And she read it, and she can see a couple of things in there that were pulled directly from her life. So, yeah.
What about the second book?
The second book, Breathing in Reverse, was the result of many years ago. I was watching an interview with a young celebrity. He was the it thing at the time. And an interviewer asked him, so, where are you going to go from here? And he just made this flippant comment about how, somebody could jump out from the crowd and stab me, and it'll be over. And I was like, all of a sudden it hit me how really, truly vulnerable these celebrities are. And I started writing about that. And then again, that sort of evolved. He's a main character, but the protagonist is really the young woman who ends up being stalked by somebody because they're jealous, and they think that she's competition for his affections. So yeah, it all came from this interview I happened to be watching.
Well, I'm always interested when I interview people who have gone from writing nonfiction to fiction, how you make that transition.
I don't know if I was conscious of a clear transition, but I've always said it's a very different animal, writing fiction than nonfiction, but just having some command of the English language, I guess. And as you said, being an English major, you were very aware of the language and punctuation and phrases and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I think just being able to write and put thoughts together down on paper that made sense and flowed did help. But fiction writing is very, very different from nonfiction.
And you also contribute and talk about writing and publishing in several newsletters. What do you see in this crazy industry in the next few years? Is AI going to be the the big boogeyman that they say that it is for writers?
It's really in its infancy right now, and I think it has potential for some really good things in other aspects. My background is in health and nutrition, and I see AI being wonderful for medical practices. Information, yeah, it's great. But for writers, as I see it right now, not so much. I mean, it just really seems like there's going to be a lot of what now we consider piracy is just, taking, because I mean, these computers, AI, they're not creating things on their own. It's a collection of information and writing from other people like us. And so that is going to have to be figured out as to what rights do writers have. It's already difficult. Anybody that has a book published, you can find it pirated online in a second. And it's not even worth doing anything about unless you're rich and famous, and then you can hire lawyers and so forth. But yeah, I think anything could happen at this point. It's very unclear where it's going to go for writers, I think.
I agree. I read an article about the writer's strike going on out in LA right now, and that's one of their major concerns. They think they'll take away, all these jobs of writers and put one writer in a room with a couple of machines and say, write in the genre of Stephen King, and here's what to write, and the machines can take over.
Yeah, I mean, that's a real possibility. It may sound like science fiction, but it's not. Yeah. It's concerning. I mean, even now, there are AI books that are being published on Amazon. So, yeah. It's anybody's guess where it's going to go.
Have there ever been any specific books or seminars or writing retreats or groups that you can share that improved your writing journey?
Yeah, my favorite is Writer Unboxed, and that's not a pitch because I write a column for them, because that column just started a few months ago. I've been to, I think, 3. I'm signed up for the 4th one. It's a long one. It lasts for like 5 days, I think. And it's been fabulous. Great speakers. There's no pitching involved. There's no agents that are there. Well, if they're there to attend the conference. It's all about craft. It's not so much about the business of publishing. So it's been wonderful. And they didn't have it for like 2 or 3 years because of COVID. So now it's going to be, last year it was virtual, and this year it's going to be in person again. So I'm really looking forward to that. And the Women's Fiction Writers Association retreat every year is very, very good. It's shorter and it's a totally different structure, but it's great for networking, talking to other authors, finding out what they're doing, how they're doing it. Yeah, so those 2 are my top choices.
And the Women's Fiction Writers Association is meeting at their annual conference in Chicago this year, and it's their 10th anniversary conference.
And I'll be there. Yeah.
Oh, well, good. Yeah. I'll meet you there.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. Looking forward to that one.
What about any challenges with publicity? A lot of writers say they want to write. They don't want to promote themselves. Have you found anything or any ways that you can promote these books?
Well, doing things like this is not my forte. I'm not great at public speaking, which is an understatement of the century. So, yeah, I depend on social media and Facebook ads. I think Facebook ads have been the main driver for sales of my books. I've done BookBub ads, but that is, unless your book is on sale, deeply discounted, it's just you're throwing money down the drain. Amazon ads are really, really good for self-published books, but for traditionally published, and I consider a small publisher traditionally published, it's great for exposure, and it's hard to measure what that exposure is doing, but you don't get many sales out of it. And then, of course, whatever you sell, you're splitting the royalties with Amazon and with your publisher.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I do what I can with social media, and Facebook ads is the main thing. I've had a couple of international book bubs, but they don't do as much as US book bubs, which fingers crossed, I'm hoping eventually I'll get one.
I know they're very dear and very scarce. I've had a couple of the
Yeah.
international myself, and the US are very difficult to get.
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody knows what their criteria is. Is it a lottery? I'm not sure.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about the passage you brought to share today, and then read from your work
Okay.
so we can hear your tone and voice?
Yeah. I had one much longer picked out, and I decided it was too long, but this one's very brief. And, the protagonist's name is Rachel Allen, and she is being stalked by, as I mentioned, by this woman who thinks she's in competition for the affections of the celebrity Mick Sullivan. And Rachel has been living at home reluctantly because she lost her job. She used to live in the city, Manhattan. And she has just come back from an interview for another job at a record company, which is where she had worked before. So this is her heading home. It was Friday, so meatloaf would be the meal of the day. I found the 7-day menu cycle either comforting or stifling, depending upon my mood. I started the 15-minute walk home from the train station, mulling over the interview and what I could have done, what I should have done, and how I would handle things differently next time. Maybe I should have provided Jude, that's the guy who interviewed her. Maybe I should have provided Jude with a slow striptease of information, revealing just enough to keep him wanting more. I should have played up my involvement with the talent at Broken Vinyl Records. I should have told him about how I discovered the Cage Kings on YouTube, tracked them down, and arranged for them to come to New York for an audition. They were signed on the spot. Or I could have shared how I saved the day when the guy who had the job before me had double booked studio time, leaving one of the hottest new bands with no place to record. Frantic, I'd called everyone I knew and quite a few I didn't until I found an open studio. My boss led me in a little victory dance around the office. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. For the time being, I was going home to rest up and start again in the morning. Something good was waiting for me out there. I just knew it. A breeze surfed through my hair and I picked up my pace. I had unearthed fresh hope. I had read somewhere that pessimism was an illogical response to failure. Maybe, but sometimes I wondered if my bursts of optimism were an illogical response to my life. Daylight was slipping away, casting unfamiliar shadows as I walked up to the house and glanced at my faded green Toyota sitting in the driveway. It had been my faithful ride since high school. Though not much to look at, it was paid for, a fact for which I was increasingly grateful. As I came closer, the light shifted, and I stopped short. I blinked twice, certain I wasn't seeing clearly. Reaching out, I traced a razor-thin line that ran across the driver's door to the rear door and around to the trunk. My fingers absorbed the simple words scratched into the finish. Mick is mine. So that's
wow. You have us wanting to hear more. That was great.
Hopefully, yeah.
Do you complete research before you start the book as you go along? How do you do your research?
I think it's a little bit of both. I do some research before, and then as I'm writing, sometimes things that I wasn't expecting to be writing about enter the story, and so then I have to do research. When I was doing Breathing in Reverse, there was a lot of research about stalking, and that was pretty freaky. I read some books on stalking. I read a textbook on stalking by a psychiatrist in California who had actually done some court testimony for celebrity stalkers. And for some unbelievable reason, he was willing to talk to me. And I had like a 45-minute conversation with him. And so some of the things in the book, I say this all the time, that sound really crazy. You ain't seen nothing yet. I mean, this is like, this things like this happen. All of this is based on something that I read about. So yeah, that was a lot of research prior in that case. And when Robins appear, I think it was more as I was going along doing the research. And there's some medical stuff in there that I was familiar with anyway, so that helped.
Well, I think the truth really is stranger than fiction. And if we delve into some of these areas, it can be pretty overwhelming.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have any other books in you?
The one I'm working on now, I'm actually about, writers will have a gauge for what this is. I'm about 52,000 words in. So it's over halfway, and I really like it a lot. I originally wanted to finish by August. Well, August is here and I'm 52,000 words in. So my next goal is the end of the year. I'm really hoping to have a decent draft by the end of the year.
You're moving quickly along if you just released the other on August 1st.
Well, if I can keep to that schedule, the third book, if it gets published, would be closer to the second book than the second book was to the first. Yeah.
That's why I think we do get a little more rapid in our writing after the first or second book. We can move more quickly through our craft, because the first book is usually learning that craft. And like you said, fiction is different than nonfiction writing.
Yeah. And I have a critique group. I've had critique partners, critique groups, meetups, anything you can think of over the last several years, and it all helps. You have to have feedback. I mean, I think it's a real rarity that a writer can put together a novel and have it be publishing ready.
Well, I got hooked on the editing process and editors, because they would all tell me they wanted something different in the book. So I was scrambling around between about 6 editors trying to figure out what they wanted and fit it into the book. And I finally just said, the book is finished.
I get that. You can get crazy with, for example, if you look at reviews, I'm one of these people that reads all my reviews. I mean, good, bad, ugly, whatever. And you have one person that says, oh, I love this. It was the best thing ever. And somebody else talking about the exact same aspect of the book going, this was terrible. I can't believe I read this.
So, I know. You just get whiplash from some of
whiplash.
These reviews.
That's it.
Well, what does writing success look like to you personally?
Right now it would be getting this third book published. The common knowledge or general wisdom is that you need to get 3 out before they start building on one another, feeding from one another. Somebody reads one book, they like it, so then they get your other book. That would be hopeful, and a little bit more ROI on my efforts. But yeah, I love doing it, and I just love language a lot. And I'm big on analogies, metaphors, similes. If I read something like that in a book, it's like, oh, I wish I could have written that, So, yeah.
I feel the same way. Sometimes I'll hear a premise and think, oh, why didn't I think of that? Or even a cliche, the editor will say, that's a cliche. And I'll say, well, that's why it's a cliche, because we all love cliches.
Yeah, this cliche thing is like out of control.
What would you think is your writing kryptonite?
I guess, and this is nothing original, but I think maybe procrastination. It's like I don't know. I want to have a chunk of time if I'm going to sit down. You hear about people, especially women with small children, and they say, oh, I wrote for 15 minutes or 30 minutes, or while I was sitting in the car waiting to pick them up from dance class or something. I need to like have a solid chunk of time before I can reset my brain and remember what I was thinking when I left off. And so I don't know if that's exactly kryptonite, but time is my kryptonite, I guess. And I've got a lot of time now because my kids are grown.
But we
But
can always find some other way to spend our time. I'm the same way. And I have to have all conditions perfect for me, just like when I sleep. It has to be the right temperature, the right light coming into the room,
yeah.
Everything has to be perfect. And I do need a lot of time, like you said. So do you have a writing routine? Do you write every day, or do you wait till the muse strikes you?
I wrote a whole column once on I don't believe in the muse. I mean, the muse can be a person. And I've joked that maybe Spotify is my muse because I listen to a lot of music, and I get a lot of inspiration from song lyrics. I just think they're full of cliches, but sometimes twists on cliches that are inspiring to me. But I do not have a writing routine. I write when I feel like writing, basically. And sometimes I don't know, be fixing dinner or putting something away, and something strikes me, and I have to go right then and either make a note of it or type it into the manuscript right away. So that happens a lot. But yeah, I don't have a regular writing routine. If I get a free chunk of time, because I'm still working, and if I have like a week or a couple of days where I don't really have anything due, I'll head out to a coffee shop and, maybe 3 or 4 hours. And that's a good chunk of time.
Well, see, you apparently can write around other people and lots of noise, and I can't do that.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm distracted. I'm like that dog with the squirrel, I would be watching everybody coming in the door instead of writing.
No, I can pretty much zone out as long as there's not a lot of loud noise. I can pretty much zone it out. And I listen to music while I write. Some people find that distracting, but I don't really like quiet when I'm writing.
So if you don't believe in the muse, you probably don't believe in writer's block.
I think writer's block is if nothing else is going on in your life that's illness or death or upset with your children, that can create writer's block because you've got your brain just is elsewhere. But as far as writer's block, just because I can't think of anything to write, I don't know. I think maybe it's boredom. Maybe it's, I don't know. I have a hard time defining writer's block.
Well, sometimes I have to write to get the writing flowing, and it may be
Exactly.
terrible writing, but you have to get something on paper to get the process started.
Exactly.
Well, Densie, as always, our last interview question is, our writers over 50 are a unique set. Do you have any advice for writers 50 and above?
I don't know if I have any advice specifically targeted toward older writers. However, I guess I would say don't let your age be an obstacle, because I think it's easy, especially when you see a lot of really young, peppy authors that are, on Good Morning America and, making the tours of the bookstores. You can feel discouraged, like I don't belong there. I don't belong here. But it's not the case at all. There are a lot of very successful older writers, depending on how you define older. If we're doing here 50 and above, there are a lot of them. And I just think go for it. I mean, even if you've never tried it before in your life, just be sure that you're taking classes, you're going to conferences. And if you can't afford to go to conferences, do some online things. There are a lot of free programs and webinars that you can attend. and get critique partners, young and old. If you go to like a meetup, you'll have a very mixed group, young people in their 20s, people in their 60s and 70s. And especially my characters tend to be young. I don't know why. I like, maybe I think back of that time in my life, and I like delving into that. And it's just it's a very emotional time, good and bad. And I enjoy that. And so getting feedback from younger people is important.
I agree. And I have seen so many writers who wrote their first books after the age of 50 now who are Reese Witherspoon picks and USA Today bestsellers. And
Yeah.
some are writing into their 80s and 90s and still writing beautiful work. So
Yeah.
it's out here for everyone who wants to write a book. There's so many options available. And we just appreciate your sharing your journey today with us. And now we can count you among our authors over 50.
Well, thank you so much, Julie. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us today. Please look for Authors Over 50 every Thursday when we will have conversations with accomplished debut novelists over the age of 50. Please subscribe and share with a friend. And check out my own publication journey after 50 at www.juliadaily, that's DAILY, like dailynewspaper.com. Until next time, keep reading and writing. And remember, it's never too late to fulfill a dream in life's sweetest third.